Language is polysemous. What do I mean when I say polysemous? I mean, if we break the word down to its Greek roots, what we see is two words. One of them is poly, which in Greek means many, like polytheistic, many religions, as opposed to monotheistic, or polytheistic, to believe in many gods, as opposed to monotheistic, to believe in one God. And sema, which means sign or meaning. And so when I say language is polysemous, and not just me, but also people like Saussure, as well as the author of your textbook who adheres to this idea, Zarevsky, language is polysemous, meaning that language, any particular word, has many meanings, depending upon the audience, and depending upon how that particular word or how that set of words interacts with somebody's experience. So language has multiple meanings. This isn't true for just language. This is also true for audiovisual experiential media like movies. I saw the Ides of March this weekend. Anybody else see the Ides of March? Those D-Days. I suppose you guys were like doing D-Day stuff. I would have been doing D-Day stuff. I was doing D-Day stuff when I was where you are. But it's a great film. I thought it was a good film. My wife thought it was an adequate film. I thought it was a good film. And the thing that probably made it good for both of us is we saw it in Sioux Falls, but we had a conversation about it going all the way back to Vermilion. So for 40 minutes, we were able to have an innovative and novel discussion even after having been married for 11 years. And the reason is because the movie is what's called an open text. It doesn't tie everything neatly up at the end. It doesn't provide you with a definitive conclusion to the narrative. The conclusion is created by the reader. It's reader response. It's an open text. We are allowed to complete the story by interpreting the various elements of the story. And this is a very postmodern idea, the idea that a story begins in the middle of life and ends somewhere else in the middle of life. And thereby, it becomes more realistic. It's more like real life. Real life isn't tied up neatly in a bow like at the end of an episode of How I Met Your Mother. Real life goes on, and not everything has an equivocal answer. And so, the fact that language and movies have multiple meanings gives us opportunities to discuss what the meaning is. I'm going to talk about how language has multiple meanings with two concepts. One is the signifier, and the other one is the idea of the condensation symbol. And these words are going to appear again. Symbolic signifiers are slippery. This is one of our 3 cats. This is Sister. Sister is part of the first generation of cats that we got. When we first got cats, we got 2 cats, and we decided that we were going to name them after characters in one of my wife and I's favorite plays, favorite stories, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof by, I think it's Tennessee Williams, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so there's somebody out there who's just saying, who's just affirming me powerfully today. I can't say who it is, but there's somebody out there. Anyway. So we decided we were going to name all of our cats after characters. So we have Brick and we have Maggie. Those are the first 2 cats. And then this cat was a rescue. She was a stray outside of our apartment building down in Oklahoma. So we called her Sister. So the first generation of cats all have names from the play Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. So that's Sister. Anyway, symbolic signifiers are slippery. What do I mean by that? Remember I showed you that chart up here and we talked about how there is the sign, and the sign consists of 2 elements, the signifier and the signified. The signifier is that empirical element that we can encounter, whereas the signified is the thing to which the signifier refers. So let's go ahead and look at the sign of cat. Okay, so cat is a sign. And it's broken up into at least 2 elements that we've already talked about in this class. There is the signifier, that's the empirical element of the word cat. It's the thing that you see, that you encounter with your 5 senses. You also hear it when I say cat. The signified in this case is the definition of cat. It's a 4-legged mammal that's furry, it has a tail, it goes meow, it purrs, it hisses, etc. Notice that the signified for cat is no particular cat. It's no one single cat. Just as the word tree doesn't point to one single tree, it points to an idea that's called tree-ness that manifests itself in oaks and hickories and elms and walnuts and spruce, etc., 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 right? Same thing with cat. It manifests itself in a signified, which is catness, which applies to cats that you've known, cats that I have, cats that you have, etc., 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 but it's no one particular cat. Then there is this other thing called the referent. And that is what is conjured up in my mind when I hear the word, the signifier, cat. It manifests for me a specific cat, in this case, sister. I could have put Chauncey up here too, or I could have put Rick up here, I could have put Maggie up here. Any one of our 4 cats. But I chose to put sister up. She was the first cat that came to mind. That is the reference for me. Does that make sense? Let's unpack this a little bit more. So essentially, every word has multiple identifications. Because different audiences possess different reference. They have a different experiential relationship to the symbolic signifiers that you use in your speech. Different members of your audience will experience the words of your speech differently because each one of them will conjure up different reference. Because we all have different experiences. Now, I mentioned that it's a good idea to identify with your audience. Kenneth Burke said that you persuade your audience to the extent that you identify yourself with who they are, what they hope for, or what they fear. So you want to identify with your audience. But in order to identify with your audience, you need to have some conception of what their reference are, what their reference for words are. So denotative, and those words are in your text, right? And these are important words for understanding the way in which verbal communication works. Denotative refers to the signifying, that is the definition of a sign. The thing to which a signifier points. It's abstract. It's no particular cat. It is catness. It's no particular tree. It is tree-ness, catness. There's a character named Katniss in a book I just read. Well, a year ago.
Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games, right? And it's going to be a movie, right? Who's going to star in it? Yeah, but who's going to play Katniss? Okay. Okay. It's a fine. I thought it was a fine series of books. So denotative refers to the signified, and connotative refers to the referent, the experience that one has with the words. So you say cat, I think sister. Now this brings us back to the clips with bows.